Okay, welcome to this vintage tutorial. Lightwave has been around a long time, and before we had OpenVDB or Turbulence, we had HyperVoxels and particle effects, and that's what we're going to use today to show you how to do a quick and easy fireworks display. This is not a hero display, but it will be great for the background of your scene or as an example of just a way to do things. Okay, so we're going to start with a chain of 4 nulls, and I'll start with the first one, and we'll call this one launcher because that's what it is. This is the launcher for your firework. Most fireworks aren't actually rockets themselves, they are mortars that fire up into the air and then they explode. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll start off with our first null, and I don't want it to be straight up because I want it to show how we're moving around in space. So let's just tip it a little bit like that, and we're going to add emitter, an FX emitter. And here the first thing we're going to do, and we're going to do it for all of our emitters, and we're going to have 4 of them, is we're going to change the size down to 0.2. What this does is it concentrates your explosion, your vibration into a smaller area, so it makes it tighter. If you have an explosion that's over too big an area, then it just doesn't explode. It just goes anyway. So what we're going to do now is we want to set our birth rate to 1 and our particle limit to 1, because literally all we want to do is fire off a mortar into the air, and I want to see how it goes. One of the great things about particle effects is that you can just hit play and you can watch your scene progressing all the time. Right now all we've got is a single dot in our box that's flashing on and off, and that's because the particle lasts 60 frames. We've got 120 frames for our scene. So let's give it some welly. First of all, let's send it shooting off into space. So we'll go like this and see how that goes. And oh, even further. There we go. And it tails off towards the end as it reaches the apex of its flight. What we're going to do is introduce some gravity to the situation. So we'll use Earth standard of minus 9.8. And of course, all of these figures you can change to suit yourself. So that's really good now. That's looking exactly what I want. But what I want to do is catch the rocket as it hits its apex, which is where we want to have it explode. So I reckon they're 33. So let's make our particle only last 33 frames, and we'll see that now all we have is a boom and then it disappears. That's exactly what I want. Okay, so I'm going to open up the scene editor so you can actually see what I'm doing all the time. And in here you can see that I have my launcher. What I'm going to do now is create a new particle or a new null, and this time I'm going to call it launcher trail, for that is what it will be. So, and let's parent this launcher trail to the launcher. Okay, the launcher trail needs to be an emitter as well, so let's do that. And like I said before, we can just hit play and see how it goes. At the moment all we've got is our single polygon particle launching up into the air. So let's give this a go. Let's leave it as it stands right now, but what I want to do is set it to frame, and I want to set the influence to parent emitter. And what that gives me is a set of particles that all fire off at the moment when their parent particle fires off. And that might be a great look for something, but it's not what I want. What I'm going to do now is go into motion, and I'm going to give it a bit of no, I'm not going to give it vibration yet. I'm going to set my parent motion to 0, which gives it none of the parent's motion, its velocity, but gives it, yeah, okay, fine, gives it the path that it's following. And as you can see, we don't quite have enough particles because we go up here and then we've got the dot that carries on. We can work out how many particles we need. We're launching 100 particles per frame. Our particle reaches its apex at around 33, so we need 3,300 particles. Oh, not 33,000. And now we have exactly what we need in terms of the particle path, but let's give this a bit of vibration so that, oh, that would be nice for a different kind of display, but I think let's try something more like that. How's that? That's looking pretty good, but it's a bit too even. All those particles falling off at exactly the same time. So let's do my particle weight, and we'll plus or minus that by 0.2, and we'll do the same with the particle resistance. And for the lifetime, we don't need them to last much more than let's say 40, let's say that, because that gives them a little bit of time to fall down, but we want them to fall down as well. So -2. That's not bad. I think I probably want to have it explode a little bit less. So let's try 0.3 for vibration. How's that? Oops. And now what I've done is I've made keyframes for my particles. I don't want that. So let's just wipe all those out. Delete keys. Boom. Okay. And do this, which is what I wanted to do. Okay. Let's see. Oh, that's going to the other way. That's better. Okay. So we can see our path is working quite nicely. Just move it down. Very nice. Okay, so now what we need is a new null, and this is going to be our explosion, the thing that hits at the top of the apex. So what we'll do again is we'll do a null, and we'll call this one explosion. Seems fitting. And for explosion, we want that to be parented to the launcher, and we're going to add an emitter. And for this emitter, we want to set its nozzle type to parent emitter end. What's going to happen is when this launcher particle reaches its apex, reaches the end of its life, that's when it fires off the other one. And right now we've got 100 particles firing off. I don't think we need that many. I think we can get away with 50. But what we do need is in the motion, we need to have vibration set to 20 as well. So let's see what that looks like. Hang on. If we do 0.2, then they'll start rising. We want to have them fall. How come we've only got 2 particles? Oh, because I'm doing it by second. And what I want to do is by frame. Boom. There we go. We've got our particles and they are floating in the air. Let's have them disappear a bit at a time. We'll set some weight there, and we'll set some resistance there, and we'll set the time lifetime to 10 frames plus or minus. That gives us a bit more twinkliness. So there we go, that's good. Now what we need is a trail for the explosion, the same as we had a trail for the launcher. So let's just add a new trail, a new explosion trail. And this one we will parent to explosion. And here we could just make a new one, but let's take what we have here. We'll copy it and we'll go into explosion trail and we'll paste it. And that will give us something at the end that's a bit like our that's more interesting. Oh yeah, that's cool. Nice. Let's set the gravity to be less. Oh, that's going up. That's quite cool. Let's change the particle lifetime. Cool, excellent. And we could even go one further. We could take this one and we could do a new null, and we'll call this one secondary. Secondary. There we go. And this one we will parent to explosion trail. And we'll add effects again, emitter. And like the last one, we will set it to frame, but we will set it to parent emitter end. And watch what happens. Oh, we don't have enough time maybe in the scene. Oh, so we have our explosions happening at the end there. Let's just check. Oh, that's not as interesting as I thought it would be. Anyway, the whole point is that we can play around all day long with the particles, and that's great. However, the problem we have now is that we can't display them. So let's save this, and we'll just call it. So we've got it saved, and now if I go into VPR, you'll see that we've got nothing. We should have. Oh no, we shouldn't have anything here. But if we go to say here, we know that there are particles, but they don't show up in VPR. That's because particles in their own right are just points in space. They don't have any form or anything. So what we have to do is give them form. And to do that, we're going to use HyperVoxels, the old-fashioned Lightwave HyperVoxels from Lightwave 7 times. To do so, we're going to need to do one thing above all, and that's press Ctrl P and make sure that we're using legacy volumetrics, as it says here. If we don't do that, then we won't see anything on our screen. And now I'm going to press Ctrl Space and then just go to HyperVoxels like that. As you can see, I've been practicing this a bit. So now what we can do is get our trail items, and we won't bother with the secondary for the time being. As you can see, these are big blobs, and we don't want big blobs. All we want is little bursts of light, and I'm just going to use a sprite. This is the simplest form of HyperVoxels, and they're really not realistic at all, but what they are is super fast to render. So where my launcher trail? I should have something there. No, sprites as well. Yeah, that should definitely be something that. Oh, particle size 0. Let's just bring that up a little bit and go in. So there we go. We've got our particle trail going. And then what we want is our explosion trail. Let's just go back a bit. Right, so that's our explosion. Or is that our secondary? No, that's our explosion. That's cool. So we want sprite. There's nothing there. Let's go back a bit. Ah, there we go. It's a bit difficult to see everything, so let's hit Control F5, and that allows us to turn off our backdrop completely, just to give us a black background, so we can see our explosion a bit better. And here, again, this is going back. This is pre-PBR by a long way. So what you're going to find is that you're going to use the old school texturing system for Lightwave, and you can use gradients. And if you use a gradient for these things, in fact, let's just do this rather than here. Let's do this with Launcher Trail, because I want to show you something with that. Okay, Launcher Trail, T gradient. What we have here is the ability to gradient based on relative particle age. Now this is the lifetime of each particle, whereas particle age is just purely the frame time. So if you're at frame 29, you are at this point in the particle age. If you are doing relative particle age, that particle might only be 2 or 3 frames long, because it might not have been created at the same time. So if we go here, then what we can say is color for 0, we want to change this to that kind of orange. And then color for here, we want to go back and make it redder. And as you can see, pretty easily, we've made a particle trail that changes color as it flies up. Okay, so it's all based on the relative particle age. So this particle is now younger, so it's closer to here than it is to the pink end of the thing. Okay, so explosion trail, we can do the same again. We can do it based on an image. A procedural texture is also fun. You can change it with a procedural texture that you need to layer one on top of the other to make it really good. Gradients are always the easiest thing to do. They're the go-to element, and relative particle age is your best friend. So we will say for this time we want it to be cyan, and at this time, right at the end, we want it to be green, like that. So as the particles get older, they go progressively greener. And remember that as you send off your future explosions based on here, the secondary explosion, the tertiary explosion, and so on and so forth, they can all have different colors each. The color is dependent on each specific null, which is why we didn't do all this in one null. We could have done to some extent. Doing the parent emitter end would have been difficult, but you can certainly do it like that. And another thing I want to show you before I go quickly, and we'll go back to the normal view now, is we did this all based on a single rocket launcher, right? But if we just go back to launcher, we don't have to limit it to one. Let's change it to particle limit 5 and do 1 per second. So as we go on, we'll see that we should see. Hang on a second. Let's change it to a bit more than 1. Okay. Oh. Frame. Ah, you see there are 2 things there, but let's set the motion will set the vibration or the explosion. Let's try 3 for that. And all of this is just purely playing around, practicing with different things. So we've got a single rocket launcher that's firing off multiple rockets. You do need to pay attention to how many particles you've got as your particle limit, because if you've got a limit of 5, then it's possible that you'll run out of particles, and you might need more, because you want to, look at that, bam, bam, bam. That would be so good. Okay, that's it. I've gone on for far too long. Like I said, you've got to play with HyperVoxels. You've got to use legacy volumetrics for it to work, and keep saving your scene. Just keep playing and pressing play and playing around with what your particle emitters give you. That's about it. That's all I've got time for. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy Halloween!